Now, if you have a phone and an iPad tonight, you're in pretty good shape. Because we're going to go back and forth between a couple of books here. And it would be probably the best way of doing it. Before I start though, we've had a debate over the last few weeks about when school would open. It wasn't us, it was El Paso that has constantly kind of kept things going back and forth. And we were talking this afternoon, and I had called back to check something with the mayor's office, and no answer, and I hung up, and Sam Morgan called me. And almost at the same time, I finished reading an email that I got from our lawyers. And the lawyers, actually, the email that she wrote to me said, "Good news, and I hope this will make your day," which it did. Part of it was a ruling from the Attorney General of Texas. Y'all don't know how lucky you are. You really don't. You have a strong governor, a strong lieutenant governor, and a strong attorney general. And I don't know if I'm supposed to say anything about politics or not, but I'm going to tell you that your leadership makes all the difference in the world. So I'll just read a little bit of this. This is from Ken Paxton, our Attorney General. This is dated July the 17th. And I want you to know that apparently the city and much of the county government was not notified of this change. Because the mayor had told us the other day we could not open without massive fines until after September 7th. And my question to her was that when September 7th came and we went to open up, are you going to extend it another 30 days? Which is, I think, is going to be the approach that they're going to take to it. And it's been, kind of it's really been a dilemma because I can't tell parents when we're going to start. But this says to religious private schools in Texas from Ken Paxton, Attorney General of Texas. With the start of the school year approaching, the Office of the Attorney General provides this guidance to help you comply with COVID-19 public health and disaster orders from state and local governments. The Attorney General acknowledges the robust constitutional and statutory protections unique to religious individuals in communities at all times, even during the COVID-19 pandemic. You know what that's based on? That's the First Amendment protection, which we have as churches, which for some reason the church has, in the past several years, forgotten. These protections promote religious liberty and ensure that permissible government action takes only the least restrictive form. The governor of Texas rightfully identified access to religious services as essential services which must remain open even when other aspects of our communities must close to mitigate the spread of the virus. Y'all translate that? Religious private schools and religiously affiliated private schools should utilize prior joint guidance on mitigation strategies for houses of worship issued by the governor and attorney general. The governor also exempted religious services from the statewide masking order. I told you the other day, although we have still maintained wearing masks, but strongly encouraged houses of worship to require masks. Additionally, when the governor encouraged houses of worship to require masks. Additionally, when the governor issued orders applicable to public schools, he expressly acknowledged that private schools and institutions have the freedom to make their own decisions. That's not what I was told by the city and the county. And he goes ahead, it's kind of continues. I gave this to one of our founding fathers today. I will tell you that it says in here that if the citizens in a school district desire and ask for classroom teaching for their students, the school district must provide it, or they will not be funded by the state. That is what you call a serious issue. Thing I think that kind of stuck out in all of our minds, this has been out since July the 7th. It's been a long stretch from the 7th of July. Part of the rest of it came out on the 17th of July. I don't want to say anybody's playing games, but what got me is that when one of our aldermen, who is responsible for part of this, knew about part of this, said this afternoon, never seen this. He said this brings up some very serious questions. I'll tell you one of the things that struck me. Our governor has a better feel for what's going on or what the church means in people's lives than most church members do. I mean that in all seriousness. Because the governor has looked and said that those religious services are essential services which must remain open. Period. In other words, some of the stuff that we've gone through over the past several months, we could have avoided had they made this decision earlier. And I know that a lot of people are so frightened of this virus that we have lost our ability to function or think things through. I talked to the mayor's office the other day and was told by a young lady, very polite, very nice, but she told me in essence, you can't open. You know, I said, the best science says children do not get this easily. It's not like it would be for an old guy like me. None of the rest of you are as old as I am, but regardless of what you look like. They also don't pass it very readily. And that's become pretty apparent. A lot of things have become pretty apparent over the months. But I think there's a great deal more to this than what we're seeing. And I think most of you are adult enough to figure out what I'm saying. This is meant to end in November, December. Now, I'm not sure how much I'm supposed to say. I have been told I'm not supposed to say anything about politics, although I hope Mr. Kaufman and I get the same jail cell after Sunday night. However, I think it's time that as it was with John the Baptist, as it was with the prophets of Israel, what do you think they preached on and why were they killed? How many prophets of Israel were killed by the Jews? How many prophets? How many?
All of them.
Why? What threat did these guys pose? I mean, the one I think about real quick is John the Baptist. The only thing he was saying to the king was, give back your brother's wife and kind of straighten things out because you're in adultery. And she said, off with his head. There's a prophet named Zechariah, not to be confused with the writer of Zechariah, who was killed between the altar. My point is, do we see how important the church in a religious view is to a nation? Honestly, I don't think the average church member gets it. You have a candidate who's running who is a Hindu. And I'm not talking about a Hindu that's goes over to India and bathes in the river and comes back, but somebody who genuinely worships the Hindu gods, not God, but gods. If you've never seen the pictures, I have never been into a temple outside the United States that's Hindu, and I take it back, I have, but not one that was in India. In India, they are carved with pornography. You can learn a lot from the carvings. And this woman has a good chance of being the vice presidential nominee. She's going to have a world of difference between her viewpoint of the world and our viewpoint of the world. I don't know whether we're supposed to say that or not say that. I don't know if that would make a difference to you, because I think a lot of people would look and say, well, it won't make any difference because she won't act on it. She is acting on it. I think it's her grandfather, and was the Indian Secretary of State. She has ties that are tremendously deep. We have a senator's wife who is part of the remaining Chinese emperor's line. She's one of the few remaining. She sits on the board of a Chinese company which builds ships for the Chinese Navy. I don't know about you, but to me, that's a bad choice. And by the way, he's supposed to be on the side that I'm supposed to be on. But I fear that. You have one that's always pitched herself as being for the poor. She wrote the bankruptcy laws, and if you'd like the backup, I'll be glad to get it for you. She wrote the bankruptcy laws for the United States and passed it through Congress with her name on it. She makes her living, as does her husband, buying up bankrupt properties and flipping them and selling them. Honest or dishonest? What's that called, Bob? Do you remember? I mean, you have things going on here that, personally, I think you need to know about. It ought to make a difference. We seem to be totally off track. James Madison said, frankly, no non-Christian should ever hold office. Y'all know what the tie there is between Madison? Like Madison saying that? Do you have any idea what the tie there is? Why would Madison be such a unusual man to say that? Anybody know? Who wrote the Declaration of Independence? Thomas Jefferson. Who wrote the Constitution of the United States? At least 90% of it. James Madison. For a guy like that, or John Jay, first what do you call him? Supreme Court Justice. He's the highest one.
Chief Justice?
Pardon?
Chief Justice
of the Supreme Court. He agreed with that. He had to modify it, but he basically agreed with it. Boy, Those are some pretty tough things. You know why they say that? I mean, would it click with you to say why they would say that? If you can't agree, if you cannot agree, if you can't pull a worldview together, and then you're trying to make law and you're trying to pass legislation and you're trying to do things together, you don't have a common view, you're never going to be effective. I told a man the other day that in business you are never, but Bible says you should not have partners. And I told him, I said, I don't think you have a partner. He said, oh yeah, I do. I said, oh, you talking about your wife? I said, that ain't counts. I said, you didn't go home and tell her that. And he said, yeah, I did, so I'm still in trouble. But that's in Scripture. There's a principle that's there. You create a two-headed monster, they die pretty quick. So we're now free. We are free because you have three men. The governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general who happen to have a common worldview. And they have agreed we can open on the 17th. And it's a very important, time for us, and it's been one to really release things for us that we need to have released. However, I think this is going to be an ongoing thing. The documents are all out there online. That was the other surprise today, and that's also kind of the question that our alderman had as to why weren't we told if this is an open document, except it was hidden. It's important. You're fixing to make a decision, I think, in November that's absolutely crucial and critical. We have spent 18 years fighting a battle and making wrong decisions because our leadership does not understand what the Muslim religion stands for. So repeatedly, we pull off wrong decisions and then can't understand why things aren't going the way that they're supposed to go. Because until you actually come to a point to where you can say, I understand who I'm fighting, only then can I draw decisions that make determination on nation building of what needs to be done. To me, in Iraq, the question wasn't trying to nation build. You couldn't do that without saying you must have freedom of religion. And we were promised from the Bush administration they were going to give us freedom or give us a constitutional democracy or republic, actually. The first sentence out of the Constitution for Iraq said this is an Islamic state to be ruled with Sharia law, which says you'll never have a Christian that hold office or to have any strength to it. And it should have said something to us right then. I don't know if it means, but if somebody will please give me some guidance how far I'm supposed to go. But we come to church, we sit here and we look. I think personally, I think we're faced with the end of times. Now, I'm not saying it's next year. I'm not saying it's the year after, although that would not surprise me. If that's true, then there's certain decisions you need to make. Then where would you go to make those decisions? I know it doesn't look like the Bible, but it'll work. And that's one reason for doing this. And I think you also need to recognize what the governor is saying is we are an essential service. We are essential to keeping this nation going. Would you do me a favor, Carlos? Would you lower the temperature on one of these, just a couple of clicks? So let me ask you a question then. Where's the rapture at in Scripture? Where? If it's happening before the wrath starts, which most are going to say the wrath starts at the very first part of the 70th year of Daniel, which we've been looking at, and it's a secret rapture. Remember that. Okay. Can you tell me anything else in Scripture of any great importance and secret? And why would it have been secret for 1,800 years and suddenly have it show up in 1830? All of a sudden. Because if somebody show me that secret rapture. Somebody show it to me where it says it's going to happen before the 70th week of Daniel, or the tribulation period, if you want to call it that. You might show it to me? Because I've asked that, repeatedly. We're in Matthew chapter 24. I have asked, repeatedly, looked in books written by Pentecost and Freeman and Schofield and all the big guys. Said, where's the rapture given? The answer is, it's a hidden rapture, it's secret, and we only came to know about it in the 1800s. Now, if that makes sense to you, that's good. But I have never seen anything that God does that's this big, this large, that he tries to hide. In fact, if you start Matthew 24, starting in verse number 4, it said, Jesus answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you. Now, what he's talking about here is, he's come down from the Mount of Olives, he's sitting at the foot of the Temple Mount, and he's telling them, hey, take a look at what you see. Take a look at what you see. But when you take a look at it, it said, verse number 4, take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying,